Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you've ever wondered what it's like to actually leave the classroom, build a career outside of teaching, then this episode is for you. Today I'm sitting down with Erique Berry, a former math teacher who's taken a really unique path from the classroom to Apple into nonprofit and now into tech at Canva. And what I love about this conversation is it's not a perfect transition story. It's real, it's nonlinear, and it's full of those moments where you're figuring it out as you go. We're talking about everything from knowing when it's time to leave teaching to navigating different roles to what sales actually looks like in tech and why it might be a better fit than you think. So, whether you're just starting to think about your transition or you're already on that journey, this one is one you don't want to miss. So, grab a coffee, pull up a chair, invite a friend, and as always, let's get ready to do this.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Lena Marie Sale, the Edtech Guru. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me on this journey, for all the support that you give me, and for following along. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get ready to do this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by my colleague, Erique Berry. How are you doing today?
Doing well. It's Friday, so excited.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
weekends here.
What's better than Friday when you have the weekend ahead of you? All right, so we want to dive in and just learn a little bit about you. So if you can share a little bit about who you are and I guess how you got to where you are today.
I'm originally from North Carolina, but I would say really my background has mostly been in public sector. So right after college, started as a math teacher, and I've had time at Apple, worked at some nonprofits, also did food photography for a little bit, not full time, but that was my COVID gig for myself. And then most recently, in the last 2.5 years, I've been at Canva.
It's great. I love hearing everyone's background and kind of how they got to where they are. So let's dive in a little bit into, so you spent time as a math teacher and then you kind
Yep.
of transitioned to other sectors of business. Can you tell us a little bit about, obviously, a lot of people go into teaching for a specific
Yeah.
reason and then they decide to transition out. So I'd love to hear your story about what that looked like for you.
Yeah. So I always like to share that I didn't study education in college. I actually was an applied math with a focus in econ, but I graduated in the Great Recession. And I also shared too that I was also a first generation college student. And so I did have a limited exposure of careers, right? And so when I graduated, I was like, hey, I need a job and I need insurance. And so in North Carolina at the time, and I did want to teach, I did have a pull on my heart. I just really wanted to teach students math and teach it well. And so I was like, I'll go into teaching. Really, a lot of my professors tried to talk me out of it because they were like, you have a math degree. You're good at econ. You could do so many things. And I was like, no, I want to it's kind of like joining the army. I want to do my duty and go teach. And so I went to teach in North Carolina, Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, what I was trying to say, as a high school algebra 2 teacher. So that is where I spent my first 2 years, and they taught me well because it was a Title I school and still my favorite group of students. But we went through a lot together in those 2 years.
Yeah, being in a Title I school is quite quite challenging. I also, like you, I was first generation college graduate, so I also didn't really know much, but had always wanted to be a teacher. So I think that's interesting
Yep.
to go in. But also what people don't understand is today's generation is the Great Recession, which I'm glad you mentioned that. Is
Yep.
there were no jobs for
Yep.
anyone. There was nothing. Even in teaching, it was very hard to even get a
Yeah.
job in teaching.
Yeah. I think I lucked out because I was a math teacher. And so I had a math background. And I chose Charlotte, North Carolina, because I was going to school in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Charlotte had the highest salary, and they were giving math teachers a $5,000 bonus, and $5,000 seems a lot of money, and so I was like, I'm going to Charlotte, and so I had applied, didn't hear anything back, and I called this school, and I was like, hey, I applied to be a math teacher here, but I haven't heard anything back, and I remember the vice principal at the time, he was like, well, when can you come for an interview? And I said, well, I can come anytime. He was like, well, can you come this afternoon? And I was like, not today. I was like, I'm in Greensboro. And he was like, well, you said anytime. But I literally went 2 days later for an interview. So, yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. So you taught for a couple of years, and then did you immediately transition after that out of the classroom, or where was like your next journey?
Yeah, great question. No, so I actually stayed in the classroom 3 more years. I moved to the DC area. So I taught at a charter school in DC for 2 years, ninth graders math, which was a great experience because DC has a more of like a world view. So really introducing students to like what math looks like around the world or how the world is incorporated. So I did enjoy that. And then I came back to North Carolina, like all over the place. And then I taught 1 year in the charter school. And between the time I was in DC and moving back to North Carolina, I started working part time at the Apple store. Cause,
Okay.
teachers, you always have like a side job, right?
You
So I
sure
started
do.
at the Apple store.
Okay.
So I moved full time as working at home as Apple support. So they call it Apple Care. So at my 5th year, I was like, yeah, I think I'm kind of done or I need a break. Cause I tell people don't believe it, but I have more of an introverted personality. So teaching would like drain me. Like I literally my first 2 years of teaching, I think I used to take a nap on my lunch in the car. And so I always was just exhausted from the interactions. So I was like, I need something a little less interactive. So I went full time working from home doing Apple support. And then I did chat support. And then from chat support to chat sales for the Apple
Okay.
store.
Yeah, I think oftentimes when people transition, what I love about hearing like the story of like transitioning to something else is like sometimes it's because of a student or admin or that sort of thing, but sometimes it's just that you feel like you're ready for something else, something different, and it's not necessarily like a student pushed you or that sort of thing. It's just that you need something better for you. And I don't think a lot of people do a really good job of recognizing that. I think there's a lot of guilt that teachers carry, and they're like, I have to stay for the students or that sort of thing. But I think
Yeah.
what I love hearing from you is like you were working part-time at, knowing these other opportunities, but then you also knew like I need to do something for me that's going to it's going
Yeah.
to suit me. And I think that that's an important distinction that I think a lot of times teachers miss. They just carry too much guilt. I think that they don't want to
Yeah.
do it. But there's nothing wrong with teaching and bringing that background into things. I think I'm sure you'll agree with this, like, and now you work as an education advocate at Canva working with the
Yeah.
districts and things, but like that background gives you such an immense skill set that I don't think you could probably gain from most other industries.
Yeah, and I think one, teachers have to realize nothing's absolute. So, like, I remember even my first 2 years when I was moving to like DC, my students were like, bummed. They were like, you're not going to even see us graduate. And I was like, I could totally come back to graduation. Like, I'm not leaving the universe. So, nothing's absolute. I think also teaching teaches you like grit. Like, you just, like, as teachers, we just make things happen. And so, even in my current role, like I'm lucky to work with a lot of former educators. So it's like in our mind, there's nothing we can't do. There's nothing we can't figure out. There's nothing we won't do for ourselves to make sure that it happens. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's I don't know. Yeah, nothing is absolute. And I think also what's interesting is that you did transition into doing, the sales and the sort of thing at Apple. But then what did you do after that? Did you transition back?
Yeah, I did. So I literally worked. So altogether, I was at Apple for 6 years. I did the 4 years doing tech support and sales. And after those 4 years, I decided like, hey, I don't like working weekends. I don't like working the holidays. And so like the thing about teaching is you get the last 2 weeks of the year to like rest, binge all the TV you want, visit your family. And when I was on at Apple, that was not existent. That was literally the hardest time I would have to work. And I was like, I don't like this after the 4th year. So transition, went back to teaching and went back to teaching elementary school for a little bit. Yep.
That's interesting. How did you like the switch from teaching the olders to teaching the littles?
I think so. I will say my sweet spot is definitely high school. The younger group, they wanted independence, and I was happy to give it to them. Like, I was like, oh, you could totally do that by yourself because I wasn't ever in the space of like having to walk. Students to one place to another, or, recess duty was not a thing. So that was probably my worst experience of teaching elementary school. I was like, I never want to have recess duty in my life. So, but it was really cool. Like 3rd grade was like the sweet spot. They just wanted to learned so much. They were like, we see what you're doing with the fifth graders. Can you show us that? And I was like, well, there's a couple more skills you need before you can do what the fifth graders are doing. So I feel like there is a space in elementary school where they're just so bright eyed and, they just want to know everything that like kind of, makes you feel great.
Yeah, I think so too. But yes, I don't know, both sides,
Yeah.
taking a nap, like that sort of thing. I used to take a nap every day after school. Like I just couldn't hang. I just like couldn't
Me
hang. It
either.
was like so exhausting. Yeah. And it's funny because I don't really nap now, but like,
Yeah.
I miss those siestas sometimes.
I'm still a napper, but it depends on the day. But
Yeah.
some days like it can, but it is really 9 to 5. Like, so I don't get a chance to take a nap. And then it's 5 o'clock. I don't want to take a nap then. So I'll
Yep.
be up all night.
So, okay, so you go back to the classroom and then what kind of sparked you to kind of make, I guess, because obviously now you're at Canva, so we know you're not in the classroom.
Yep.
So what kind of sparked that, like, all right, I've had enough, I'm ready for something else?
Yeah, I think like I'll be like transparent and clear. The school I was at was not a good fit for me. And so it sounds great, but it was like a school without walls. It was a charter school. It was like brand new. And it was like the startups of schools. And like, that is not fun. So, and I was just like, absolutely not. I just don't want to be in the space anymore of a startup school. That's hard. And so I was like, well, and I started taking like some coding classes because I was like, oh, I'm good at math. I can learn code. So I did take some coding classes. And then I just end up, one of the questions people always ask me all the time, like, how did you leave teaching? I quit. Like, like it's not like, I had this amazing job lined up after. I literally just, I was just like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And was it scary? Absolutely. Did it work out? Yes, it did.
That's interesting that you say that because I think, yes, other people wait until they have like another job. So what did you do in the interim or were there any like specific steps that you took to kind of go that next step?
Well, I will say I was in a unique position that I only had to care for me. But I also had kind of like side things that I did. Like I always did tutoring. I always did like, there was a nonprofit I was working with doing like STEM classes. So there was some income coming. And then even when you quit, depending on what state you are, you still have, options for COBRA, affordable care, marketplace to get insurance. So those things were kind of taken care of. So because I had to worry about me, it did make it easier. I will acknowledge that. But I do think if, it's more than you, like leaning into your community, being okay with doing these odd jobs of things kind of just to eat for that day. That's okay before you get kind of your next gig.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I also was the same in that I always was like serving on the side or like bartending sort of thing.
Yep.
So when I quit, I was just like, you know what? I'm done. Like like when I knew I was going to be done, I was lucky in that I like had developed, I had a job lined up, which I knew, but I was going to do it regardless. Like it was,
Yep.
I'm done. I can't do this anymore for me. So yeah. So now you are an education advocate at Canva. So you want to tell us a little bit about like what that role looks like? I have a lot of teachers that are always like hesitant to move into like the sales like type realm. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the work that you do at Canva and kind of what that looks like too.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a district engagement advocate at Canva, I always say like it's an interesting title because like when I first was interviewing for Canva, they would call it a DEA. And I was in Northern Virginia at the time and I was like, DEA, like that would just like throw me every single time because I'm thinking about the Drug Enforcement Agency. And I was like, what is this role really? And I think the role has shifted so much even in the 2.5 years that I have been in it. But I would say like currently, like right now, a lot of it is on board, helping districts on board because there is a tech piece to it, helping them on board, also helping them get professional development, expansion, really making them see or understand how, or coming alongside them, I should say, of seeing how Canva is a instructional tool and not just a tool to make things pretty or a tool to babysit kids, like, when they have downtime. I think that is the most fun part is like having these conversations about how, teachers can have these engaging lessons with students. And then also at the same time, students learning these visual design skills that is a part of their everyday world now that we didn't necessarily grow up with, that they have to know. Like, having a great presentation will go, regardless what's on that presentation, if it looks amazing, people are already bought in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Yeah, it's definitely a much more visual world than we've ever like lived in, and these kids won't know. Like when I was a kid, I had to go to the library to get information,
Yep.
or wait for the dial-up internet to kick up and
Yep.
try to do some stuff there. But now everything is like at their fingertips, but it's about how you translate it and how you visually do that.
Yeah. And I think like our visuals were like a printed worksheet, an overhead projector. I even started teaching with an overhead projector.
I did too.
So it's like a whole different world for them. Paint,
I love me some Microsoft Paint.
Word art.
Yeah. Yeah, I was an expert with that. Don't you worry.
Me too. I already knew I was going to Canva one day, as much as I loved word art.
Yeah, right. I mean, you could sort of do it, I guess, in there too. Okay. And you've been at Canva for 2.5 years, and you're doing like the onboarding and that sort of thing. But what has life kind of looked like for you post transition?
Yeah, I would say like really what has changed is like I have now settled into like I'm not a teacher anymore. And so that opens a lot of doors. And one part of like I took another break from work like for 9 months, and I'd had a personal coach. And so I was like, hey, I need a new job. And this is before I got to Canva. Like, Canva was really the next job. And so she took me through this exercise. It was like, I had to write out like what was really important to me. And one of them was like flexibility. So I did need flexibility of hybrid work, of like being able to work from home or also go in the office. I also needed like a space that kind of challenged me in a very like agile environment. Like if I'm doing the same thing every day, like I get bored really, really quickly. And one of the things through this process with her and me like looking for a new job was like the number one thing was I'm not going back to teaching. Regardless of how hard it got, how bad I wanted to just like have a job, I wasn't going back to teaching. And so I would say like post transition, like, and I even talk about it less that I like, hey, I was a former teacher. Like I have now kind of moved on and accept like I'm not a teacher anymore, and like what my life now looks like, even from Canva in the tech world or just in the non-teaching world or educator world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like accepting that like next. Yeah. That you're not necessarily an educator. I know. Which is interesting because, it's still like a part of like what you do day to day, but it's not who you are anymore. I think embracing that also brings like a certain, I don't know, confidence, I would say. Like, you know that you could do anything because now you have like more skills and, in your tool belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now that you have, your work at Canva, and you mentioned this earlier, is like you do a lot of like, it's not necessarily because Canva is free. You're not doing like you're not doing cold sales. So you're not going out really, it's, looks different obviously, but like a lot of it is more so like the onboarding is more so like that customer success side of things. And so because Canva is a startup, even though people don't think about us as being like a little small startup, your team is quite a small group of people that do a lot of work for people. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of build and, take those customer insights and kind of decide some of those things. So what are some of the favorite parts of like your role or some of the things that like really bring you joy every day?
Yeah.
The work that you do.
I would say like first, like the education team is an amazing team at Canva. And, we do have a mixture of like former educators and people that never been in education. But I think the passion that everybody has to make the Canva education and Canva the best product for students and a safe product for students is like one of my favorite parts. So like I can sit in a call and the district can say like, hey, we really wish we had XYZ. And I can literally like message the product team or, put it in our system that we need this. And then I can see it come alive in a short period of time. And that makes me so happy to take that information back to my districts. Like, hey, remember that thing you requested? We now have that. So like even early on, like one example, one district was asking about barcodes, and they were like, we really want to use Canva to print our school badges, but we need barcodes. And I remember typing into Slack, like, hey, a district is looking for barcodes. And somebody saw it and then made sure we got a barcode app into Canva so they can now use barcodes to print their school IDs. So like having that close and seeing things come to life and making things happen. I hate to refer to my districts as customers, but they are my customers. You are still selling, because selling is not just like the transaction of $1. It's like making people believe in the product and using the product. And I think it's actually harder when something's free because people don't have buy-in. And so I have to get them bought in without, them actually turning over any money. Cause like you care about the things you spend money on, like things you are free is like, oh, it's okay if I don't use it, but I have to like do this extra and really pull them into why Canva is the best tool for some of the things that their students are doing.
Yeah. And I think working in like a sales role or like, in a sales organization, you get the opportunity to work with product, you get the chance to work with marketing and legal and, the product marketing teams. Like there's like a whole wealth of like cross collaboration that happens. My team and like design school, like getting to make sure that you kind of have that influence. And what I'm hearing you say is that you really like that ability of being able to work with other people to kind of bring, because really you're the first point of contact for a customer or, for your clients, whatever we call them. And you get to translate that message and then actually see. And you can't just go to them and be like, they need a barcode. You have to go to them and say, they need barcodes for blah, 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 because this is what it's going to make for us in the long term. Like there's a lot of like, not only are you selling to your districts, but you're also selling to the other team a lot of times, and like being able to like quantify that impact and like what, what impact it's going to have. And I think that's also like an underutilized or like an under discussed part of like the sales organization. I think that's the most like when I did sales, I thought that was the best part, is that I got to like dip my hands in so many pots.
Yes.
And then also get the impact of what I knew about the customer and being able to bring it to life.
Yeah, I think like the cross-functional work, it exposes you to so much. And I think that's the biggest difference from teaching, because like when I was a math teacher, I was with the Algebra 2 teachers all day. We didn't cross work. Like, even though it would have been amazing for us to cross work with science or even any other department, but we just didn't. And one thing about sales too, like even when I was at Apple had this thing, like they said the products sell themselves. It's your job to find the right solution for customers. That is the same. Like I learned that very early. So it wasn't about the product. It was the solution for the district, for the schools. Of course, it's free, but I got to find which features in Canva are the solution for districts. AI. So AI is big. So, showing what our AI suite is and what AI, and reiterating like how it's a safe space for students to explore AI and learn about AI. And so it takes this level of relationship building. I think that people really don't understand that's really what sales is like really, really relationship building. So if you're good at that, sales is where you should be. And, I feel like sales is like a little excitement too. It'll have us a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you opening that up, because I think, I think there's like it's just a nuance. We're thinking about the dollar to dollar interaction that's happening, but it's really that relationships that you're building with your customers, with your clients, with the teams that you're working with. And I think that if you can manage that, and that's something that you're good at, which a lot of people are, they're like, I'm really good at like, building those relationships with my students or my teachers or that sort of thing, then sales can be really good. It can be a really good pathway for you. And I know it seems scary, but like I always say, jump into sales first. I know that sounds crazy, because I think you get the opportunity to work with all of those other teams and you get to take like little no thank you tastes of all these like other departments while building these relationships. And if you can be successful at sales, you can really, in my mind, do anything. So I think I appreciate you bringing that, like, I don't know, the joyful side to like the sales part. Because I think it can be just so daunting and intimidating. Like, I can't do that. And it's like, you're a teacher. You literally, that's what you do every day. You sell.
Yeah.
That's all you do
sell
every single day.
Sell. You sell your subject to students every day. I remember, like, math has a bad rep, So I would tell them every day about like the math they see in everyday world, like the things they love is built by math. Like even if you pursue math, what that looks like from an income level, like so all those like I was selling math, and then students bought into it. And so they liked coming to my class. The same thing if students like coming to your class and you have a great relationship with your students, it will transition to sales. And I think like if you have great relationship building, not only with people, but like your colleagues and coworkers, I think like it also helps because like when you're good to people, people help you, and you help other people. So yeah, relationship building is like a number one.
It's very big. So if somebody wanted to
Mhm,
transition from the classroom,
mhm,
feel like your biggest like
mhm.
lessons are, or maybe some like tips for people who would like to transition that you did?
Yeah, I would say the biggest tip is don't take the perspective like anything is better than teaching because truthfully it's not. Like I miss the summers like I miss the holiday breaks. I miss kind of that control of my classroom. Like even if I was having an off day, I could be like, "Hey, students, we're going to take it a little light today." And but you don't have that freedom I think in the private world at all. So please know that. So I think figuring out like truly what you don't like about teaching will help. Cause like teaching may not be the issue. So you can move into sales, you can move into a different role and still have the same issues because you never really identify like what was really happening. I also would say too, like don't always expect to get like especially in the tech world because you hear a lot of conversations about like, teachers going straight into tech, which it does happen, but sometimes those roles don't pay as well as I feel like they kind of take advantage of like the transitioning teacher. And also know you can take another role. Like even before I got to Canva, I worked as a community college helping students. They were doing their first 2 years at the community college. Then they went off to a 4 year to get a STEM degree. I actually love that role. It didn't get the funding. So it got eliminated. But like, think of a bigger perspective of like where you can be. You actually may love college at the community college level. You may like it at the university level. If tech is calling you, if the private sector is calling you, do it. And also I would say research, know what skills you need to have, what translate. Cause I think sometimes people sell a dream like, oh, you have management skills. You could totally be a manager, at Google. And it does not work like that, because they are looking for something very specific or looking for you having experience in these other roles in tech. Yeah. Just figure out what you want, decide where you want to move, really see if that's where you want to move and just work towards that and know that it may not be your first step right out of teaching. You may kind of, take a couple other steps before
Yeah.
you get to your dream role.
I appreciate you saying that because I think a lot of times teachers are like, this next role is my forever role. Like there's been a ton of people that I've coached and they're like, I'm just looking for my forever role. I just want to, and I think teaching like puts you in that situation where you like, that's all you'll ever do because there's not really like a lot of growth opportunity in teaching. But that's not the case in the real world. It's like, you do need to jump. When you jump, comes more opportunities off it and also becomes and it doesn't make you a bad person. Like you learn everything you need to learn and sometimes you just outgrow the organization or the
Yep.
organization outgrows you, one of the two. Like you do need to make these jumps into other things and sometimes it might just be another field. So like your first one, I think what you said was perfect. Like identify what you don't want, but also I heard you when you were talking about working with your coach too, is that you identified what you do want. So you need to have those two buckets of like identifying what you really want. I think your non-negotiables, that's important.
Yep.
And then the things that you don't want, also non-negotiables between the two. And that kind of points you into a pathway. I think today's world is much different to transition than when probably you and I transitioned because
Yep.
networking was big, but today networking is everything. And I think that you do a lot of that in your work through Canva, but you also do these other initiatives outside of Canva, whether that is speaking at conferences that are not necessarily associated with Canva, but maybe go linearly with that. I think even as professionals who have transitioned,
Yep.
still networking that still has to be done and a certain amount
Yep.
of upskilling that still has to be done
Mhm.
and connecting because otherwise you're not growing in your own role and the organization can pass on you at any time, and you can do the same thing. Like the more you can grow professionally and personally, the better it suits you in the long term.
Yeah. And I think too, like, no role is your forever role. Like, even right now, I'm in grad school for project management. And project management is something that I've always wanted to do. And, like, I kind of did like buy into it. Yes, I could transition to a project management role without having like the certifications. But what I found out is it kind of didn't happen. Like, I was trying to, but it wasn't happening. And so I was like, well, it's not happening, but you know what? I'll go back to grad school and do it. So, like, I do think like even my next transition will be into a project management role. But now I have this experience in sales that I know that I can do at different levels of project management and sales. And I may just say no to tech and sales altogether and go somewhere else. So I think no role is forever. And so, you have to continue to build, you have to continue to network. And I think that's what makes it fun too. If you are, just you every day, I think people make what you do so much better. Even, the side things I like have conversations about, like people are excited about a Canva, but they're excited to know your story and then you can learn their story and then you kind of build a relationship from there and help each other.
Yep, I totally agree with that. And I just want to note something for like a lot of people who are listening. And what's more unique, I think, about your transition is one, you've transitioned into a couple of different spaces, which I think is great. But two, you didn't immediately make the jump and say, hey, I need to go right into ed tech, because that's the only journey that I feel like teachers think that is straight and narrow. Your skill set and the things that you do can translate to a lot of other tech sectors than just going straight into ed tech. So like, I know you're in ed tech now, but you were in Apple, you were working at a community college, you were doing these other things. So like, it doesn't mean that you can't go back to ed tech, but like it is important that you widen the umbrella, because it can become a very saturated market in a very small space. Like ed tech is big, but it's not that big.
No.
Yeah.
And I think if transitioning is really what you want to do, you have to break your identity from teaching, because you just live in that space. And I feel like it's like a string that keeps you from exploring other spaces just because you are still in that identity of teacher. So edtech is the only space I can be. No, there's tons of spaces you can be, but because you're living in that identity of educator teacher, edtech only seems like the right step to move.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you've said that a few times, like breaking off your identity from like teaching. Teaching is not, it's not who you are as a person.
No.
Part of your story, but it's not like when you walk in and you're going, I don't know, first date or first time you're meeting someone in person. It's not like I'm a teacher, like that's who I am.
Yes.
You say your name, right? Like that's who you are first. And then you can lead with other things that you're interested in. But it's not, they doesn't see you on the street and they're like, oh, that's a teacher. Although sometimes you can't identify people by their teaching. You can just tell we carry ourselves like that. But you know what I mean? Like that is not everything that you are. There are other things that you do. And I think what you were saying with your transition, and we'll kind of wrap this up a bit, but like you were doing other things and just teaching. And I think when people make the transition from teaching, they only think about that teaching. They don't think that I did food photography, I did this, I worked at Apple part-time, I did these other things. And these things all feed, even if you just work at the school and you do the booster club, or you do STEM clubs and STEM classes, like I did those too. Like those are all very important skill sets that are not just teaching. That's just one part of the segment of where you are. So I think it's important to look at the whole picture and not just a really tiny speck.
Yeah, and look at your skills outside of teaching. Like some feedback I even got yesterday, somebody was like, I can tell you're a great teacher, because I was explaining this process that I do, which I like back end stuff. But that was not the first time I've heard that compliment. And I jokingly tell people it's because I was, teaching seniors how to solve quadratics. And it's like, that's true. So like one of the things, like skills I take, like I'm a great communicator. Like I can explain things to people, or, one of our values is make complex things simple. And I know I got that from teaching, but I don't have to feed it through teaching. Like I could just say like, this is a skill that I have a skill of making complex things simple for people. And so like look at the skills that you do have from teaching. Don't put it in the teacher box, but put it in the world of the different, or this particular role or the industry you're interested in.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Okay. So we're going to wrap up our interview today. Thank you so much for being on today. Now, if somebody wanted to follow you, connect with you, learn more about you, where would be the best place to do so?
I would say LinkedIn. So it's just at Erique Berry. That's pretty much the only one I'm on right now on my journey of transitioning in grad school. So LinkedIn is where you can find me these days.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day, sharing your story. I think it's so important that people get to hear from other people, from like all of our backgrounds are diverse and all of those types of things. So I think it's really important to hear other people's stories. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. You've made it this far. We are so thankful that you're here. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, comment below, and join us for all of our next videos. Thank you so much for joining us as we disrupt education together. See you guys soon. Bye, everybody.